I want to discuss a big development for Consensys this week. In a blog post on Tuesday, Consensys announced that the SEC notified you that the agency is closing its investigation into Ethereum 2.0 and will not pursue an enforcement action against the crypto company. This development came after the Wells notice Consensys says it received from the SEC and the lawsuit filed by Consensys a couple of months ago, alleging regulatory overreach by the regulator. What was your reaction to this latest development, and what do you think it signifies for the industry as a whole?
Well, we were very pleased to receive the letter noting that the investigation into Ethereum 2.0 had been concluded and that it was concluded without charges against Consensys. It's the right result. It's the result that we should have happened a year ago. It's a result that we were trying to seek in our lawsuit. So we're very pleased that this happened. But of course, the fight isn't over. The Ethereum investigation was just one of 3 investigations that Consensys has been facing and that are the subject of our lawsuit in Texas.
And so what do you think this development signifies for the industry, if anything at all?
Well, it's hard to say. The letter itself was very short. It was very clipped. It said only that the investigation was concluded, no charges were being brought, but it even resisted it disclaimed us drawing any conclusion from it, such as, that they found that Ether was a commodity and not a security. So although it's welcome that the investigation is over, it doesn't go far enough to provide the sort of transparency that the industry really needs as to why the SEC has closed this investigation and how that decision is relevant to the many other investigations and enforcement actions that are ongoing. So although we're pleased with the result, it just doesn't go far enough.
So what happens now? Do you still plan to pursue your lawsuit against the SEC? And if so, what's the main reason for moving forward with the suit? I know Consensys sued the SEC back in April to, quote, defend the Ethereum ecosystem, according to blog posts. But now that the agency is closing its investigation into Ethereum, do you think moving forward with this lawsuit would still be an important step for Consensys and the crypto industry at large?
Well, not everything that we've sought in the lawsuit is redressed by this letter. Like I said, there are 3 investigations into Consensys. One dealt with Ethereum 2.0, or the merge, which was the transition to proof of stake. And that lawsuit was really focused on the Ethereum protocol itself and Ether on its own, whether Ether on its own was a security as a result of the merge. But there were 2 other investigations that we've dealt with, and those have culminated in a Wells notice finding that the Consensys has violated securities laws with respect to MetaMask swaps and MetaMask staking. Those are very important product features for our MetaMask wallet software. And one thing I want to emphasize, the MetaMask staking product feature, it relates to Ether staking. So services that Ether holders can take advantage of to stake their Ether. So although the investigation into Ethereum 2.0 and Ether on its own is concluded, there are still big questions around staking services and how the SEC views those. And until we get definitive answers and really a judicial ruling that we have not violated the securities laws, we're going to keep fighting, because we brought the lawsuit in light of this cloud of regulatory uncertainty that's been hanging over our head for years. And while this letter goes a little way in removing that cloud, it doesn't go far enough.
So just to be clear, you are in fact continuing with your lawsuit against the SEC?
Yes, I mean, we're still reviewing the implications of the letter, but as you know, our current plans are not to change and to continue fighting so that we can get the relief that we brought the lawsuit to seek.
Expanding on what you just said, does this week's development settle some of the other concerns you outlined in the lawsuit against the SEC? The suit claims the SEC has wavered on Ethereum's classification as a security. Do you think that is more clear now?
Yes, the letter does give us some of what we've sought, and I think that's important to underline. We asked the court to declare that the Ethereum investigation was unlawful and that it could no longer proceed. and that also the SEC should be barred from bringing an enforcement action against Consensys predicated on the Ethereum 2.0 investigation. Now, the letter, by saying that the SEC is closing the investigation without charges against Consensys, does give us some of the things that we have been seeking in the lawsuit. But again, we still are looking for that declaration that MetaMask swaps and MetaMask staking are not violating the securities laws. And so there's a lot still to deal with.
I do want to mention we reached out to the SEC about this latest development, and a spokesperson told us the agency does not comment on the existence or non-existence of a possible investigation. But what do you think changed? Why do you think the SEC closed its investigation into Ethereum and won't pursue enforcement action against Consensys? In your blog post from this week, I read that following your lawsuit, several policymakers, including members of Congress, voiced concerns over the SEC's Ethereum investigation. Do you think that played into it at all?
It's the $1 million question: what changed? Because if the SEC has changed its policy positions, which is really sort of would be the most welcome news to the industry and to Consensys, that would be wonderful. We don't know. The SEC hasn't told us what changed, right? They just sent us a letter with no explanation, simply saying they concluded their investigation. I have to think, though, that just if you look at the timing and the chronology of all this, that the Ethereum investigation was full bore before we brought our lawsuit. And then after we brought our lawsuit, there was mounting pressure from members of Congress, from others in the industry who previously had been unaware of this investigation. You have to think that that did lead to the SEC backing down on the investigation. But it would be really useful for everyone to know what the SEC's considerations were, what they concluded as a result of the investigation, what facts they found, what determinations were made, and we haven't heard anything like that yet.
Do you think the recent decision by the SEC to approve a rule change that would pave the way for spot Ether ETFs had anything to do with this change of heart regarding Consensys and Ethereum?
Well, I think it's part and parcel of whatever is going on inside the agency that's leading them to back away from Ethereum. I think the rule change approvals, they were predicated on finding that Ether is not a security. That's what securities laws experts who know more about the securities laws than I do are saying. But obviously, there was a lot that would have gone into that decision, and that decision to approve those rule changes and pave the way for Ether spot ETFs. And so I think it's got to be related to the closing of this investigation. But what exactly caused both of those developments to occur, it's unclear. But I should be clear, for our part, these are the right outcomes under the facts and the law. And so we applaud both the approvals and as well as the end of this investigation.
So you have extensive experience in law, which includes as a trial attorney for the CFTC, where you directed enforcement actions targeting market manipulation and fraud. So what do you think about the SEC's approach of regulation by enforcement? A Consensys spokesperson said that it's, quote, imperative that the SEC abandon this, quote, unprincipled and opaque campaign in favor of much needed regulatory clarity for an industry that serves as the backbone to countless new technologies and innovation. What's your take on this approach by the SEC, and what would you like to see happen as it pertains to crypto regulation?
Regulation by enforcement is completely backwards. There should be clarity so that companies that are acting in a space can know for sure whether what they're engaging in is acceptable under the law or unacceptable. And instead, what we have is a situation where crypto industry participants have to wait until oral arguments in crypto enforcement actions to understand what the SEC's position really is. And that's just really no way to regulate an industry that's so important to the American economy, that's creating jobs, that's leading to tons of technological innovation and improvements. It's just, the SEC should be more of a partner and collaborative with the industry and helping the industry sort through the rules than playing this sort of game of gotcha, where they have these investigations, they ask questions, they're totally one-sided, and then the companies don't really understand the SEC's legal theories until they get sued. And that's just totally inappropriate.